Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Metal Mastermind Podcast. I am your host, Candelas, and today I'm with a special guest, Derek Cruz. Derek, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience and just talk a little bit about, what you do on a daily basis, and then we'll get it deeper into that.
Okay. Hey, yeah, as Ken said, my name is Derek Cruz. I am a producer, multi-instrumentalist, musician, advocate for all things music. So it doesn't matter if it is in the business side of it or if it's just playing and rocking and jamming with my friends. So, yeah, my day-to-day is pretty much wake up, find the music in the world, and figure out how to squeeze some more out of it.
That's amazing. So, yes. Okay, we're still recording. Just making sure. We're actually trying this as a new thing today. We're doing in-person podcasting, which is a little different than we've always done this. And you guys have seen a couple of the things with me and Elizabeth, but having a guest here on Metal Mastermind in person like this, outside of our immediate closest relatives, is actually quite exciting. So we're going to get into it now. I want to just start off by asking you, Derek, your sort of background. What was it like when you were growing up? Were you always involved in music, or did this kind of spring on to you over time? What was your upbringing in music like?
Okay, yeah. So honestly, from an early age, there was always music around my house. My parents are both musicians. So my father plays, he is an engineer. He worked in a music store when I grew up. So there was always music around. My mother's a singer. She sang with Sammy Davis Jr. when she was 19 years old, and they had careers. It was the 70s and the 80s, they grew up playing. So like from that, there was always great music around. I stole their records when I was old enough to understand it, mostly a show tunes collection, but, some Zeppelin here, some Billy Joel there, some good stuff, So that, my grandmother was an amateur jingle writer. So she kind of taught me piano early on. And so, yeah, like from that, you had a little kid drum set when you were, real young, and having just the encouragement of that. My father being an engineer, he had a studio when I was like yay high.
Wow.
And it was in a plywood like closet that he built, and he had old Yamaha speakers hanging on chains and like an old Macintosh LC2 or something with like no RAM. And they would make records in the laundry room with eggshell on the walls and, do the thing. So that was my home environment growing up in that world. Him going to the music store. If I wanted to skip school, he would take me to the music store. So I'm surrounded by, old, angry, music store, guitar freaks, and all sorts of weird characters.
That still never changes
No, they're all the same.
It's always the same.
They're the same people. From Guitar Center all the way back to my childhood at Ace Music in Miami.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, like through that, I got a love of music and appreciation of the lifestyle and the whole thing.
Wow.
And it led to around, I want to say I was maybe 8, that there was this after-school program called the Singing Sons, right, in Florida. And they were a boy choir that would train people at a certain level that they believed could sing, had pitch and things. And they would train them at like a college degree of theory, composition, and sight reading and that kind of thing, intervals. So like after school, I would be going, 3 times a week. And then after a certain point, there were multiple choirs and you get to a point where you're touring. So then by the time I was 12, I was touring the UK in this choir and doing, these international choir performances, singing in Latin and French and German and all these crazy languages.
What was that like at a young age, being involved in music and then having to experience like a tour at that age? Like, were you nervous? Did you have like stage fright, or was it kind of natural over time? Are you just a natural at it?
Well, it's funny. All right, I have a good story for you. All right, so early on, the director really, like kind of thrusted me into like, I guess because of my personality, a lot of the boys in the choir, we had like a clique and a thing. So I was kind of in an almost leader position. So he would, if I was messing around, he'd pull me aside and be like, they look to you, you can't mess around like that, right? You can't play patty cake in the choir. You know, the actual patty cake.
Oh my gosh.
You know, it's like, come on, you gotta adult up a little bit.
Oh wow.
So when we would go over, right, like, yeah, like we would have to do some of the higher tier singers would have to do like solo competition.
Wow.
Right? And that's where the pressure, you're like, I'm by myself. I don't have all, 40 of the other guys with me to do this. So the second tour I ever did, the first in England, which was crazy because, you're 12 years old and you're touring in another country, and your parents are just going like, okay, here you go. Have fun.
It's like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right? Like, what am I doing here? There's adults watching you. So the second tour, we went to San Francisco, which was, not as glamorous as the UK, but still fun because, I'm 13,
Sure.
There's some cute girls from Finland I'm liking. There's always a dance at the end of it for all of us. But that competition, in England, I didn't win anything, but in that competition, I got second place.
Oh, wow.
So at the end of the performance or the week that you're there performing against all these international choirs, Japan, Germany, China, they're all there, right? In Piedmont, California, like just outside of San Francisco. You have to sing in front of all of the choirs at the final concert, which is in this like 10,000 person auditorium, and all the patrons who enjoy this kind of thing. So I'm little 13-year-old me, and I have to go sing in front of 10, 15,000 people. And this is like crazy to me.
That's pressure.
And I'm backstage, like waiting to go out. They call your name. I walk up to the stage. Now the stage was like a plywood, like what we're used to,
Right.
at some like lower tier festivals or something like that. Little rickety.
Yeah.
I'm excited, in my little suit, my little clip-on tie. And I'm my whole life, I always just run upstairs, right? And I always, like, very quickly, I want to get up, get it over with. So a couple steps, and I smack on my face. Like, I fall right on my face.
Oh, no.
In front of 15,000 people. Now, you've never heard 15,000 people.
Heard around the world.
15,000
without
people.
Will Smith involved.
Yeah. So that had a couple more zeros on that one.
Yeah.
So you've never heard 15,000 people laugh at you, right? I mean, like outright laughing, right? So now I'm like, okay, I got to get up. I got to dust myself off. And I take a couple more steps. I almost trip again. And I hear a gasp, right? Like you hear it. And then I get on stage. Finally, I'm in front of the microphone. It's a straight stand. And I sing my song, which is a silly little, song. I got me a cat. It's a silly little farm song almost. So at the end of it, right, it's through the whole thing, my legs are shaking. Like you can see the micro stand just going like this because I'm that nervous. Like, and it was that rickety of a stage. And going from the most embarrassing moment of your life to the one of the more satisfying with a standing applause and like the standing ovation. So like the humility is there. It's like I've fallen on my face in front of 15,000 people. Once you do that, I think you're pretty much like, okay, I can do it.
Well, so that actually brings up a really interesting perspective of, approaching live sound and being a part of, the music scene for an audience is that, I mean, you have to kind of go through an experience, and it doesn't have to be necessarily traumatic, but I do think that helped you. It helped you, it allowed you to kind of shrug off the nerves and like, oh, I've had a really bad moment in my past before for this kind of thing that, I mean, it'd have to really go pretty far for it to top that. So it helps you to just kind of be a little more comfortable, I think.
Yeah, the butterflies kind of all flew out after that moment.
I mean, I always still akin that, there's still a little bit of a nerve, but it kind of like you learn to deal with it. And as you go through these things, it becomes a lot easier over time. So, just fall flat on your face. That's all you got to do.
In front of 15,000 people or more,
And then you've passed the
And
bar
you're
for what
good.
it means to be a musician on stage. No, that's hilarious. So your father was an engineer, and you've always been around like production and all this kind of stuff, and being at an early age, your parents really like nurtured that for you, which is
Yeah.
which is amazing.
Yeah, they really encouraged it.
Yeah, for me, I come from an artistic family as well, so arts, and for me early on it was more visual, but
Nice.
I grew into music later in my teens, and it was always the same. So I can relate with an artistic family supporting that. It's a super important part of being a musician in your upbringing, and it does give advantages
Yeah.
into how you pull yourself through your career. So now let's go into production a little bit further, because you're an independent artist. You also like work with your wife, who's Amanda Cross.
Yeah.
She's an amazing, talented singer.
Yeah, she's incredible.
And you also help produce her records. All the while you're even manufacturing vinyl,
Yeah.
right? Like that's a whole nother side of this,
Yeah.
which you are passionate about, and it makes sense. You, in your younger years, wanted to just take the records from your parents and
Yeah.
play from them. So you have an attachment to vinyl.
Yeah, definitely.
Like in production, do you always think about like vinyl at the end of it as like I'm recording this with the purpose that it's gonna be on vinyl, and that's how you intended to it, or is that an afterthought?
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely like the end goal is the highest fidelity is, for listening, other than, like high fidelity wave,
Right.
is vinyl, at least for the physical, right? So I grew up in a time frame, I'm born in the 80s. So like, I'm in the record headspace where like it's all about LP,
Sure.
right? Full LP. EPs are fun too, 7 inches and that. But LP is like, there was nothing better than opening the record, looking through the lyrics, looking through the credits, seeing who played on it and who engineered it and what studio they did it in, and the artwork was so big, and like you're like trying to find little secret things in different people's records. Your friend says, "Oh, if you play this one backwards, it does this," and there's a little image there, and that was the fun of it to me. It was almost like there was always a little mystery when you open it up, right? So like, I feel like the thing that makes music so interesting is that there is a little bit of mystery in everything, right? Because you don't know where the artist is coming from when they write this song, or, like my wife, when she writes, she has a perspective, right? But when I'm listening to her lyrics, I have a completely different perspective of what I think the song is, right? And that's the great thing about music. Everybody can adapt their own version of the song or the record in their own way based off of their life. And then when they actually get the vinyl and the real thing, they can go, and there's stories, you go on something like this and you go, well, actually that song was about, liver and onions.
Yeah, a little stinky on sometimes.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
No, that's hilarious. It's actually also really cool because when you're thinking about fidelity, there's a lot that goes behind it, engineering wise and technically, right? So your efforts are, I know you definitely think this way, that up front, going to even an expensive place to record, it might seem expensive, but the payoff is a legacy.
Yes, exactly. In the sound,
Yes.
Growing up at home, right, going from a closet 2x4 closet of my dad's recording studio at a young age, and then building my first studio with him at like the same year I went to England. Right. It was understanding like why sound does what it does, right? And then going through all of that, reading the books of like the Beatles and seeing like, oh, they put that mic there, and that's how they got that sound, and then figuring that out. I think that like learning every step of it and understanding why electronics and frequency and tubes and all these things.
Do you dabble in like tinkering in electronics?
Oh, no. That was one thing I always kind of just let my engineer friends do. It took me a long time to actually want to engineer, right? Because I was spoiled. My father was an engineer. So I was like, you be the engineer I'll be the producer. I'll play, and I'll have the creative ideas. And then you just find the sounds. I go, I want it to sound like, Radiohead's blah, blah, blah. Or, like when we had a metal band, it was like, we needed to sound as like heavy as this record,
Cool.
So with engineers, it's like a whole other brain side, right? You have to strap on left brain, right brain, and just think like, okay, wait, I have to make sure everything's in a row and my eggs are, my ducks are in a row and the eggs are in the right basket. So I really dragged my feet on Pro Tools and like diving into the understandings of compression and, all of the things. And then finally it all, you build enough studios around town and you're like, well, I got to do this myself.
Right. So how much work do you do in your personal studio versus going out to recording studios nowadays?
I think it's about a half and half for me. Like you were saying, like major studios like Electric Lady or there's a studio in New York I like to work in called Flux that I keep a lot of different pieces of gear there because I do a lot there. Like the advantages to doing work in those studios are obviously we're in New York. So like my home studio is just a control room and a small live room that basically is the vocal booth, or you can put a guitar amp in there, right? And so, we get creative. We go into our living rooms and we hook up drums when we need to and the craziness. But because I'm striving for something that I feel should be able to be on the same level as the idols of my, my past and the music that's been made before me, I feel it's important to like they played through these pieces of equipment for reasons, right? There's a reason why Eddie Kramer loved Helios, and why the Stones had a Helios, mobile studio, or why the board at Abbey Road makes all the Beatles records and the Pink Floyd records sound that way because it's the electronics and the things in it. So to me, I feel it's really important to be able to start at a level where if I'm going to not be working at home, right, where I'm just doing overdubs or maybe I'm doing pre-production, to go into these rooms and let the electricity do the work, let all of that happen and working with people that are better than me. I think that's the most important
that's
thing.
a big facet of it, I think.
Great engineers like yourself, musicians, producers across the board. For me, no ego. It's like I'm always going to learn from everyone around me because I know that if I put people in a room that are better than me, I'm going to want to raise my abilities to that standard.
Yep. And this is something we talk about on Metal Mastermind quite a bit, which is that working in the music industry, it's a people industry. It's not just, you twiddling your fingers on a guitar at home all day, every day, which you can do. But like when you're moving in a direction to achieve a certain either notoriety, fame, or just success in your career, whatever that defines for you in that case, most of the time it's going to involve somebody else involved in that process. So, I think it's super important to also like keep that in mind. A lot of the things and efforts that we do in modern home recording, they still apply as they do in traditional, commercial sound recordings. But I think that in the home, because of the limitations, we sort of garner for at least trying to get the most efficient way or economical way to get a recording. And that could be in many ways like a very professional sounding demo. And if you have the space, you can get it to a higher level, of course. But, where's the blurred line of what becomes commercial versus, home, equivalency? So
I feel like that's changed now. Like, for instance, the example of Phineas, who is, Billie Eilish's brother, right? So they made that first record. The rumor is on $3,500 of gear, right? So like you're talking your laptop, an Apollo, a good microphone, and maybe a mic pre, right?
Yep.
And the right plugins. So I feel like now home recordings can be completely commercial, right? The first guy to really do that and do the mobile studio thing was Todd Rundgren.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Todd, when he did those early records by himself, he really created the whole mobile studio thing. Now, the funny thing is most people don't know that before Todd, there was a guy named Emmett Rhodes. And Emmett Rhodes was this guy who made an entire recording studio in like the late 60s in his house and or in his garage, I think. And he was a true garage warrior.
Wow.
And the guy sounds like Paul McCartney. It's amazing stuff. You should listen to Emmett if you don't know his work. It's good stuff.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, and it's so true. I mean, like now, like those blurry lines are becoming even more diffused. So
Yeah.
But what I find really valuable about a commercial space, and the most recent, I would say that I've experienced was a very special place, which was Guilford. Guilford is in Vermont. It's like this isolated, place. I think I've spoken to you a little bit about this before. But like going into a place like that where everything is essentially done for you because you're hiring a team to, execute your work.
Yeah.
The vibe of how you approach a recording changes.
Yeah.
And you're so much more like, oh, well, if I'm not engineering myself today, because that's a total distraction, now you're focusing on making art, right? And that's a huge proponent of why I think commercial studios are still very valuable. We need to have places where people focus on one job, either engineering, either you're just being a musician. And that cost might be expensive for a lot of folks, but you think about if we're talking about efficiency and like working with home gear, right? How much longer is it going to take you to really try and get the same quality as this just buying it for once and getting in there and doing it right? So that's I think is still a very big lesson for a lot of people to walk away with there.
I definitely agree. I feel that the reason, like for Guilford, right? The reason to do something like that, right, is you're isolating yourself from distraction,
right?
And when you're doing it at home, right, you have unlimited time, right, because you go at your speed and your pace, right? In the studio, a lot of people are going, I'm paying an hourly rate or I'm paying a daily rate, right? So that mentality is still there, right? But once you get that mentality out of your head, and you're like, I'm here to create. I trust my, abilities. I trust the people around me. That's when the true art can really blossom because you've taken all distraction away. You're focusing on one thing, like you said, and then you're able to live in it and see it,
Absolutely.
be created.
Yeah, and being intuitive about that process, and that takes experience, actually. I think, honestly,
Definitely.
For someone walking into this for the first time, that's not going to be obvious to them.
Yeah. Unless they're a savant and they've just lived that way their whole lives. And then good on you, man.
Yeah, but no, that's so cool. But guys, like we see a lot of these similar stories. I think it's a very universal concept in how that goes. So let's talk about now the other thing to this whole music side of you, which is management and like promo and all this kind of stuff that usually revolves around music business. Like, how did that become a thing for you? When did you actually start paying attention to like music business?
Okay, I would say probably early on because so you start your first band, right? And then you're like, well, where are we going to play? What are we going to do? Most of the time you're hoping, I started playing in bands at 12, like the same time I built my first studio and I'm touring. So you're figuring it out as you go along. But early on, we had friends, like a friend, the piano player in our band, his older brother decided they wanted to start their own record label. So, and we were going to be their first signing and they were going to put our CDs out and they were going to book us tours. And so having like a close friend's like older sibling to kind of go like, here, we're spearheading it. You can see the reality of what it takes to book and to manage and to do these things. It kind of instilled like there's a DIY-ness to music, right? You can wear any hat you want. And in this day and age, it's probably better to wear as many hats as you can because then you make yourself more valuable. right? You show up and you go like, well, I can play, I can produce, I can manage, I can book. So what do you need? You know? So I think early on, it was just understanding that like there is value to being able to do all these things. And then as you do it more and more, you get better at it. You know, you're going to fall on your face. You're going to book a show. Nobody's going to show up. And you're going to, oh, I didn't market it enough. Or, you know, maybe I picked the wrong bands to play together. You know, it wasn't the right vibe or whatever it is. Or the venue was too far, you know, for people to go to. Or it was a holiday or it snowed. So I feel like with everything in the music business, you got to remember it's a music business.
Yeah.
It's not just music. Music's fun, and we're lucky because there's only two industries where you get to play for a living, right? And music is one of them.
Yeah.
So, but the other side of it is to be able to make it a career and a living, you have to realize the other side is the business side. So, you know, like go out there, read every book about music business that you can, and like get close to people who are in it, right? Like the internships at studios, you're learning how a studio is managed. Internships at record labels or PR companies, you're learning from the people who are doing it how to do it, and that's only going to make your ability to promote your music and to promote your vision and your art is going to get out better and into more people.
People industry.
Yes, it's not about what you know. It's about who.
Yes, and that really is how it is. And and as a matter of fact, it's one of the defining reasons why we call, you know, places like New York or LA or Boston like these meccas.
Yeah.
Because that's where people come and they congregate so much that music and art tend to blossom in those places because of it.
That's why I came here.
Yeah.
There was a scene, you know, New York City. You think like if I can make it there, you know, Sinatra, I can make it anywhere.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, it's all about your people around you. They make you better, and you find your people. You know, that's the.
Let's talk about, you know, prepping for something like a tour, because in the music business, I feel though, as in order to do a tour for a lot of bands, it doesn't make financial sense.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a very big financial toll.
So in doing a tour, at what point do you think it's ripe for a band to go ahead, or even a solo artist to go ahead and think about doing a tour?
That's a tough question. I feel like there's no really right time, right? I mean, obviously, if the stars align and your single is climbing up the Spotify playlist or the charts on the radio, or maybe you had a song in a TV show, you know, because you had a good licensing and sync deal, or if you had a friend who was just like, I'm making a movie, it's a hit, and you get it. Those are the right times, obviously, because you have to support momentum. Right? It's a wave that we're all trying, you know, you make a record, you put it out, and you just try to ride that wave as long as you can. You know, in the old days, it was usually like a 18-month to 2-year cycle where you'd put a record out, you would tour it, you'd have money from the record labels. If it was a super hit, you could really stretch it out, you know, like Taylor Swift, you know, and all these other people who are doing huge numbers. But I feel like as an independent artist, right, it's kind of up to you on how far you want to go with your touring, right? Because say for instance, like my wife and I, right? So we're still independent artists in our own right. We put our own records out. We have our own record label. We do it all ourselves. So the touring is the same, right? Like it's all based off of how far we're willing to go, right? So I feel like if you can find the finances to get yourself to where you need to go, right? And get to a place where you know, I'm going to be able to play a show. There's going to be people there. I have merchandise to hopefully sell. That'll get me enough gas money to the next place and, you know, to build my audience and my brand. So I feel like that the preparation is really mental. You know, it's preparing yourself for like, okay, it's not going to be, you know, Beatlemania. It's not like everybody screaming, you know, like you're going to go out there, you're going to work, you're going to play. Some days it's McDonald's and the other days it's filet mignon. You know, that's music. You never know what you're going to get, but if you stay consistent with it and you hammer your markets. If you're a country artist, you go to Nashville. You play Nashville. You play the South. You do the festivals. You hit the venues that are going to lift that up. You're playing metal. You got to hit the metal circuit. You want to try to get on Ozfest. You want to hit these things that are going to build the brand. And if you know someone who might be able to get you on that opening gig for, Black Sabbath in Birmingham, give me a call.
Yeah. I hear 70,000 tons of metal is a pretty fun cruise line to play on, and all that kind of stuff.
The cruises are great. Yeah, the cruises are great.
Yeah. So, and we have a couple listeners that have been on 70,000, so they know exactly what we're talking about. But this is such an important part of that you're saying is, that most of it is mental preparation, awareness, and aptitude in that case. Because I think that is very true. Like if you're going to go on a tour, you have to really be totally ready that things are going to probably burn out.
Yeah,
break.
Fire.
People are going to get sick.
Stuff might get stolen. Which, by the way, like the music community is amazing about rallying when those things happen, right? Like I know so many stories of people getting stuff stolen, and like people get together and they get you new gear, and you're back on that show the next day. So like, don't let that discourage you, because obviously, like in the world, there are terrible things that are going to happen. But there's a bit of optimism that you have to keep with music. You have to be a bit of an optimist.
It always feels kind of like a bit of a brother or sister kind of vibe, especially with metal. I've always felt like there's a very big familial community about metal.
Definitely.
Where, actually there was a recent situation where exactly that situation happened. A whole band lost their entire thing. I think it was during one of these hurricanes.
Yeah.
And they were reimbursed by their audience.
Yeah, man. That's amazing. It's amazing. Well, the metal community, I had a metal band when I was in my 20s, right, with my brother. And I realized early on that, I loved metal.
What was it called?
It was called the Watergate Conspiracy. Yeah. We were metalcore, We loved like Norma Jean and Poison the Well, and
that's cool.
That kind of stuff. And so we were heavy with the breakdowns, the whole thing. But obviously, what I realized, like playing, because Miami had a really good metal scene, like in the early 2000s, right? So there was Churchill's. Churchill's was the spot where you could go see. Everybody would come through, right?
Nice.
So I would be kind of friendly with some of the guys, like the guys in Shai Hulud, or like some of these people in some of these like early hardcore metal bands from the Florida scene, and you would see that like the whole point is like we're gonna hit each other, but like if you fall down, I'm gonna pick you up. And I think that's the camaraderie with not just metal but music in general. Like if you fall down, I'm gonna pick you up because I know. You're trying to do the same things I am. We're going to beat on each other a little bit because we love each other. That's why you crack jokes on the road and you keep things light, The pranks don't go too far, but...
Yeah, no, I loved touring. Touring was a big part of, what I loved about doing what I do. And I was doing monitors for a band. And it was like family, and, you develop these relationships with people, and those relationships last a lifetime.
Most definitely.
It's a beautiful thing, and you when you're on tour, I always felt that it was hard to see sometimes the world in the ways that you want to see them, but, because you're working. However, it is such a cool thing to be able to just like be on the road and just go and experience places that you've never been before, try food you would have never tried. Those are some of the perks of definitely doing a tour. And if you're in a position and you're thinking about doing a tour or joining somebody on their tour, do it if you haven't done it before, because it will be a life-changing experience for you. And I always advocate for that because I think it's so much fun. So
definitely. My first tour, like official tour, right? You go on the road. This is the other thing that like they don't tell you, right? You go on the road, you got a job at home, right? Your job's probably not going to be there when you get back unless you got a job that is really cool, which by the way, if you have, hold on to that job. Because music's good. It'll pay, when it pays, but then when you come home, you got nothing to do. You got to have that job.
Yeah.
So if you're lucky enough, right, like you will have people around you, maybe it's your parents, maybe it's, like people who inspire you, but they will encourage you like, hey, listen, do what you got to do, and they'll support you. I was lucky enough to where my dad said, go on the road. I got you, and I
Yeah.
like you got your bills, like we'll help you. Like they saw touring as my college education. They're like,
Absolutely.
quit college. I quit college for touring, by the way. That was like
Yeah.
that was my moment of like I'm either gonna go to college and I'm gonna be a music major, or I'm gonna go on the road and I'm gonna learn music,
Right.
life. And it had that not happened, I probably wouldn't be where I am now, because like you hit the road and you learn the rules of the road and the way it is.
Scary moment, I think, for anybody who has to make that decision, because you had a very like unusual situation.
The most unusual.
Yeah, right.
Usually people are like, get a job. Music's not going to go anywhere.
and even like I think my father, who had toured for most of his life, would
Nice.
probably have said something very similar. I think it was probably mostly my mother who would have been more hesitant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Moms are worried.
yes,
They
and, but that is so interesting too to hear, because like I've heard also other countless stories where people who have gone to like some even the best conservatories, and they'll quit the conservatory because they had an opportunity.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a gamble,
That's
but
it.
sometimes it pays off.
This is true.
And YOLO. So
Yes, exactly. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was YOLOing my entire life away.
yeah, but that's inspiring because it worked out. It worked out. And, sometimes when you take chances that way, it actually becomes very fruitful for you in the future. And your best education was doing something like that, because you gained actual experience, not, theoretics experience.
Exactly. Yeah. It's funny. Like you look back on where you were, right? And you think like if 12-year-old me picking up the guitar for the first time,
Right.
hearing, Van Halen in his friend's, garage that one day, or Metallica or whatever it was that like inspired me early on, it was, saying like, oh, you're actually going to be playing with some of these people in the future. You go, you're full of it. That's not real. Right. But like that's the gamble that you take, right? Like I have the theory. If you stay in it long enough, right,
Yeah.
you'll get to the places that you want, right? Like just keep doing it, keep your head down, stay humble. Like I play music. I play guitar. I love guitar. I love all types of guitar. That guitar has allowed me to stand next to other people who play guitar who I looked up to, and that's worth its weight in gold, because you learn from those people too,
This
not
guy's
just
humble. He played with Slash, man. Yeah. Come on, dude. That's awesome. Oh man. Dude, like can you shed a light a little bit on like some of your experiences with people that you idolize? And you don't have to get too specific, I understand.
No, that's fine. I love telling the
Like
stories.
what was it like for you? Was it like, oh my God, everything that I've always imagined came true, or was it like let down? What was it like meeting
No,
those people?
you always think like you're meeting your idols, right? Are they cool?
Yeah.
Like, are they going to be chill, or are they going to be like a dick?
Mm-hmm.
So I have found like every single person that I've been able to work with, they're amazing, right? They're all incredible people. Like you mentioned Slash, right? Slash is incredible. The first time I did something with Slash was in the city. It was for a tribute, actually a charity. He had been sober for X amount of years, so they did a concert in town, and we played it. I got to meet him on that. Very very short,
Yeah, man.
very short moment. Then a couple of years later, they asked a friend of mine, who's no longer with us, sadly, brother Wayne Kramer from the MC5, to put together the Jimi Hendrix U.S. Postal Stamp tribute show at South by Southwest in 2014, I think. So Jimmy called Slash, or Jimmy, he's gone now. Wayne called Slash. Wayne called Slash and was like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" So the one of the artists that I work with, Jesse Mallon, Wayne and Jesse are very close. So
Mm.
Wayne asked Jesse and I to perform a Jimi Hendrix song. So we're doing it's a huge event, right? Doug Pinnick from
Yeah.
at King's X
Yep.
is performing. Really nice guy, by the way. Lovely.
I heard all the guys from King's X were really, really cool.
Very cool. Yeah, they were all hanging backstage. Rusty Anderson from Paul McCartney's band, his guitar player, he did a song, was chilling. Robbie Krieger from The Doors was a part of this thing. So like I'm there feeling like Forrest Gump. I'm like, what am I doing here with all
Box of chocolate.
Right, all these legends. Yeah, my Lucille was the box of chocolates that day. So like we were doing the rehearsals, and at the rehearsal Slash was there. He's playing with everybody. He's sitting in with the whole band. So Wayne's had a thing. He was like, "All right, so at the end, we're gonna all get on stage and play all along the Watchtower," which is incredible. And he was like, "At the end of it all, we're gonna do the national anthem, the Hendrix national anthem." So
And everybody burn your guitars.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So hope you didn't bring your good one today.
So we do the song, right? We're now at the performance. We do the song, and all along the Watchtower is done. Big ending, and everybody starts walking off stage. And I remember, I'm like, whoa, 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 because Wayne's still on stage. Everyone's walking off stage. So I'm yelling at Slash and Robbie and Rusty. I'm like, no, guys, we got to play the national anthem. I say, Slash, put your guitar back on.
U.S. Postal Service.
So he puts it back on. They all put it back on, and we all come together in the middle. And I had earlier that day, I had spent a couple hours sitting and learning the national anthem, and then trying to figure out a guitar-harmony version of it, because I knew those guys would
Guitar-harmony.
a guitar-harmony version.
I love it.
So I was like, I'm going to play the guitar-harmony on this, and then I'll let these guys, because that's, for me, I'm a sideband in my own mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like to be the support for people. So let's get Slash and Wayne, let's give them the moment, and I'll give that guitar-harmony support. So we did it, and it was a great thing. And at the end, you laugh about it, like everyone's running off stage. You're like, no, you got to play it.
That is incredible. Wow. I mean, there's only a few moments like that, that you'll have. And so cherish every one of them.
Exactly. Anytime it happens, remember one thing, right? It's not about ego. It's not about anything. It's about the humility of you're here. Yep. Enjoy every moment of it.
Memories you'll make.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully somebody has a camera to capture it.
Right. Yes.
Because if you don't have a camera, it never happened.
I mean, it's one of the few industries where what we do is evoke emotion, and how you do it and how Jimi Hendrix did it. I mean, that was a masterclass.
He was trying to replicate the sound of war with his guitar, which is a whole other thing.
I mean, Vietnam was going on.
Yeah.
That was crazy stuff. And there was a lot of, political motives and all this stuff. I mean, Watergate conspiracy, hello. So that's I mean, this is
all in brand.
It's all there. And so, but I mean, that's our voice. It's our voice as to who we are as people, what we represent. And it comes back to what you represent. And when we ever talk about brands and stuff like that you've mentioned on this podcast, it's just, what do you stand for? And, who are you? What are you about?
What are you saying with your music?
What are you saying?
Yeah.
Because, that is, something that I think is not shared enough. Sometimes, and I don't know if it was just because of the rise of the internet or if it was because of just changes in culture, but I feel like in some cases there isn't an emphasis on stuff like that, where it becomes a little bit shallow. And
commerce took over a little too.
Yeah, did you ever see that thing with Rick Rubin and him talking about art versus commerce? I thought that was a very good quote.
Quite intuitive.
And just to point out to you guys, he says that if you are making something for somebody else, essentially it's commerce versus making something for yourself, which is real art.
If you don't like it, then why are you doing it?
Right, exactly. So that is something that I feel like I've lived by for a very long time, but it's nice to hear that from one of the most profound industry producers out there, who, by the way,
Doesn't play an instrument.
Yeah, confesses to not playing instruments, not knowing what EQ or compression does.
No.
He's
just ahead.
He just claims that he sits down and he listens and he just reacts.
He's ears, man. He's got really great ears.
That's amazing.
And intuition, right? Like,
I think that's what it is.
You know, his intuition is incredible. Like what he's done with all the artists he's worked with, and I love his idea. His studio, Shangri-La, right? I have a couple engineers that I've worked with that have worked there. I haven't had the pleasure yet, but everything is blank on the walls. It's all white.
Whoa!
With the idea that like there's nothing that will taint the inspiration, right? Or that will steer the inspiration. So like you have a blank canvas. Create whatever you want to create.
Wow!
You know. And something
note on studio design.
Yeah.
Aesthetics on how the artist perceives their world, right? And very cool.
Yeah. But something I wanted to go back to that you said, you were talking about like it's about the emotion of what you play, right?
Yeah.
I think that what's been lost is that a lot of people don't remember the Beethoven quote, right? Which is, I don't care if you play the right notes. It's just, did you have passion while you were playing them?
Yeah.
Right. I think that's the thing.
Yeah,
Mess up. It's fine. You know.
Yep. Or just this, even like now that you're talking about, classical composers, but like people like Bach, they knew people like had to interpret what they wrote on the page too.
Yeah.
So part of making music in those times, some people, they look at the page and they're like, this is exactly how he meant it. And I was like, yes, but also like, don't be so bland about it. Put a little your flair. I'm sure Bach would have been like, embellish that.
Don't
bring it to life.
I can put it in a MIDI and have it do whatever I want.
Yeah, Bach would have looked at this and would have been like, this is lifeless. What are we doing with this MIDI thing? Like zeros and ones. How about ink and paper? So that is so true. And I think that's just a beautiful thing that, we can still adapt from all these old, times of ways of thinking, and still there is, value that is universal. I mean, like, I was just watching stuff about, some of the oldest parts of human history, and we were making music before we actually knew how to talk.
Yeah, I mean,
it was just like beat, your chest, or beat the ground, or literally make rocks like, early form rock music. You just beat them together. I mean, like even in war.
Yeah.
We were using war drums as giving orders to soldiers on the battlefield. That's why they would always go for, the little drummer boy first.
You got to take him out.
Yeah, take him out for chaos.
Yeah, right, exactly. Who's giving the orders around here? Where's the drummer?
It was.
That's why the drummer's the backbeat of every band, man.
Backbeat.
The backbone.
Yeah. Backbone. Yeah. You take out the spine and you're just goo.
Yeah.
So, as we are sort of like wrapping up here, I just want to, ask, what would you say to somebody who's getting into, let's say, trying to get where you are, like where do you think somebody, let's say in the beginning, middle, or maybe they're further down the road, do you have any perspective that helped you as you were going down your path that you'd like to share?
Yeah. Let me think about that for a second. I would say that an important aspect is you want to first believe in what you're doing, right? Like we said, like you have to have a passion for it. If you have no passion for it, then find something that you have a passion for. So that's the first thing. If you're starting out, make sure that it's your passion, right? Because that's going to drive the fire through you for your entire career, right? Like I wake up every morning and I'm still excited to play music. I'm still excited to create because you're always finding something new. There's always something undiscovered every day, a new beat, a new band, a new melody, and or you're looking at it a little differently. Say you're a little bit further in your career,
right?
And you're the insights that I've found were that, like, we talked about it earlier, putting yourself in a room with people who are better than you to learn from and to inspire you to greatness and to higher heights, right? And then being able to, like, you get to a place to where you play with the people that you have been inspired to, by at an early age. It's keeping that humility, man. Like, you got to, like, if you show up and you're like, I'm the best, no one is better than me, right? You're going to close a lot of doors in your face because, like, yeah, you like, a good example, Jaco Pastorius, right? Jaco was self-proclaimed, I'm the best bass player of all time. Now, he wasn't wrong. He was, in my opinion, probably the best bass player of all time. If for bass playing,
Yeah.
right? It's all relative because style and choice and all of those things, right? But he was also his own worst enemy. He got in his own way because with that ego came, like, the lack of realization that it was destroying the things around him and the people around him because nobody wanted to deal with it. Like, so I feel like keep the ego out, right? If you are into Buddhism, like, that's going to help you a lot, or at least, like, getting rid of the mentality that I'm the best thing since sliced bread. Just show up, do the work, right? Homework, key. When you show up to a rehearsal is not about learning the song.
Right.
Rehearsal is about doing it with the people around you.
Making it gel.
Yeah, making it gel. Exactly. Great. So, yeah, like, do your homework. Those are the things. I think it's just a work ethic that, like, you show up. It's still a job at the end of the day, right? Like, there's days, that I have where I'm just like, okay, I have to learn X amount of songs for this show I'm doing. Maybe it's 30 songs for a show with all these guest singers, and I'm the band leader. And so I have to know everybody's parts because I'm the guy going, like, oh, that's not right. Or, like,
Right.
so, like, showing up and doing your homework and doing the work and being the most prepared person in the room is going to allow you the advantage of going, like, well, like, that didn't seem right, like, and obviously, like, don't tell people they suck, like, I've had moments where I have, and bit me in.
Have some social cue awareness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, there might be a little autism in all of us, but we might all be on the spectrum a little bit. But we're musicians, so we're very,
No, it's a beautiful message. It's very much put your best foot forward,
Yeah.
and in so many of those statements that you made, I feel as though when you're walking into a room and you don't assume, and you are just trying to do what's best for, and my father would always do this. You got to do what's best for this, and he was referring to the song,
the vibe,
the vibe, and what is it?
Song is king.
You are a servant to that, the ethereal.
So if you're playing in a metal band and you're playing country licks, you're probably not doing the right thing for the song. Right,
Yeah,
and vice versa,
unless it's some of that southern metal.
That's cool. Yeah, then just make sure you know what genres you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Right genre.
Cross genre.
So black metal.
Hey, yeah, that's okay, right?
Oh man. Well, this has been such an enlightening conversation. Derek, thank you so much for being on the Metal Mastermind podcast. And as we always say here on Metal Mastermind, is to create your own.